Welcome to the House of Truth. Today we're continuing our last segment of the Lamb of God series. We've been looking at the events from Genesis all the way through, all the way through the early days of King Saul, how they foreshadow and events in those foreshadow and foretold about the life of the Lamb, starting with his death, burial, and resurrection, the outpouring of the Holy Spirit at Pentecost or Shavuot, and and these fall feasts. How they all talk about the days, the days from the rapture to eternity. The last time we talked about the Lamb is crowned, and we showed in scripture how the Lamb had to be crowned for the promises God made to Abraham to be able to be fulfilled. And then being crowned, those who crowned him had to accept the new covenant, and have the Spirit of God put in place and then be born again, the Spirit of God placed in them so they could keep the commandments that are required to bring the blessing of Abraham into fruition. And only a remnant of those who were gathered out of other countries we found accepted, and the rest were destroyed in the wilderness. And again, we show that in scripture in Ezekiel 20, particularly around verse 36, 38 makes that very plain, just flat spells it out for you. Well, today we're going to talk about the benefit of those who accepted, who crowned the ram, and among the people of Israel during his reign. We're going to talk about the reign of the Lamb today, and look at what life is like for those who crowned him and enter into that reign among the people of Israel. And we begin with a foreshadowing here, found in Leviticus 23, verse 39 through 40. And also on the 15th day, on the 7th month, when you gather the first fruit of the land, shall keep the fruit of the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath, on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. And you shall take on the first day boughs of goodly trees, and branches of palm trees, and boughs of thick trees, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice for the Lord your God 7 days. Now, so the 15th day of the 7th month would be exactly 4 biblical months, or 6 biblical months. I'm sorry, 6 biblical months after the beginning of the Feast of First Fruits. All right, so and this is the 7th month, indicating completion. I began back there is going to be this is going to show the completion of all that began in the first month here. Now, and notice this here. The first day is the Sabbath, the 8th day, but it says 7 days. Makes it a bit of a contradiction, but it's not. It's there's 7 days. They're tied together. They're tied together. It's mentioned here again, and the day after that is almost like another separate holiday appointment. Moed means appointment, literally. A separate appointment that comes immediately following that one. Just as the day of preparation, the 14th day when the lamb was slain, is immediately followed by the beginning of the feast of unleavened bread. Except and that was at the beginning tied. This one's at the end tied to it. Now, what you do in those 7 days is you're gonna take these boughs of these goodly trees, and that indicates like fruit trees generally, palm trees, thick trees, and these are things that not necessarily fruit, but like oak trees, things of that nature, and willows of the brook, which are thin and supple. So there's a variety here in these trees, and I ain't going into all that this year, but there's some significance even to that. But the point is, there's about the fruit of the land and rejoicing 7 days, and those 7 days speak of completion of when squat's completed. And what's being completed is that promise that God gave to Abraham about his descendants on the earth until eternity. Obviously, you'll say you'll read forever, whatever, but literally it's until forever, because forever is pictured by that eighth day. And we'll talk about that two lessons later. We'll look at that in particular. So this tied to the Feast of Tabernacles, and I taught on this on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, but now originally. Okay, now in Psalm 65, verse 9 through 13, read the following. We read the following. It gives us some insight into what's going on in this time that's pictured by those 7 days of the Feast of Tabernacles. You visited the earth and watered it. You greatly enriched it with the river of God, which was full of water. You prepared them corn when you have so provided for it. You water the ridges thereof abundantly. Thou sowest the furrows thereof. You make it soft with showers. You bless the springing thereof. You crown the year with your goodness, and your paths drop fatness. They drop upon the pastures of the wilderness, and little hills rejoice on every side. The pastures are clothed with flocks. The valleys are covered over with corn. They shout for joy. They also sing. Okay, corn here, old English comes from einkorn, a name for wheat, means just grain. Don't think don't think maize from North America. Okay, it's just grain in general. But note just a little, so you help you understand this. There's this river of God. We're going to talk about it. Okay, it's going to enrich all this. We'll talk about that river of God in a little more detail. But notice the land itself is rejoicing and is blessed. The land itself is spoken of being rejoicing, shouting for joy. And that's what's going to occur. The land itself is going to be, as it were, singing the praises of Messiah during his reign, during the reign of the Lamb. Now, in Jeremiah 31, 12 through 14, we get some more insight about this rejoicing that's going on during the reign of the Lamb. And this land it's referring to there is the land of Israel. But now we're going to look at the rejoicing in among the people of Israel during this time. Therefore, they shall come and sing in the height of Zion, and shall flow together to the goodness of the Lord. For wheat and for wine and for oil and for the young of the flock and of the herd. Their soul shall be as a watered garden, and they shall not sorrow any more at all. Then shall the virgin rejoice in the dance, both young men and old together. For I'll turn their mourning into joy, and I'll comfort them and make them rejoice from their sorrow. I'll saturate the souls of the priests with fatness, and my people shall be satisfied with my goodness, says the Lord. Okay, so notice the people are going to rejoice as well. And what are they rejoicing for? Because remember, they were on the verge of starvation. They couldn't even gather a quart, about the equivalent of a quart of wine, a little over a quart of wine, or about a quart of wheat, of flour among all of them in Jerusalem to make an offering to the Lord. But now they're overflowing with those things. And notice, they got plenty to eat. Notice their soul is a wired garden. Hold that thought about a wired garden, but to remind us, I desire of all things, we're told in the renewed covenant, Brit Kadashah, I desire all things that you prosper and be in health as your soul prospers. So if your soul's not prospering, it's in torment. The rest of it, kind of doesn't matter. But their souls are going to be prospering. They shall not sorrow anymore at all. And notice dancing, there's dancing. Of course, singing would go with that, without a doubt. It's not brought here, but it's brought other places. And notice the soul of the priest with fatness. Well, remember the priest the Levites collected the tithes from the rest of the children of Israel, and then they paid tithes to the priest. Well, when the Levites were neglected, so were the priests, of course. But that's never going to be anymore because only those who are willing to follow Messiah in walking and keeping all the commandments of the Torah are left in Israel. So the Levites no longer be neglected, and neither will the priest. In fact, they're going to be given their own land. They're no longer going to be scattered either. Those curses are going to be reversed. I talked about that before. They're going to be gone. So this is why it brings up this priest and satisfied with his goodness. My people are going to, they're going to have every good thing they need in life, and they're going to be full of joy, lacking in nothing, and abundantly blessed. Now, let's go to Leviticus 26, verse 19 to 12, where when the tabernacle was being established, etc. These words were spoken to them about about a joy that was going to come upon them, and what was going to actually cause that joy, perhaps more to the point here. For I will respect you, make you fruitful, multiply you, and establish my covenant with you. You shall eat the old store and bring forth the old because of the new. My tabernacle, I set my tabernacle among you, my soul shall not abhor you. I'll walk among you and be your God, and you shall be my people. Well, when this is written, God Himself had said, they had to keep the camp, they had to do certain things out, take certain things outside the camp, except because the camp had to be clean because He walked among them in the camp. But this is not referring to then; it's referring to the future. And if we looked at the top of this, we'd seen that condition about when you keep my commandments, these good things are going to come upon you. So He's going to respect them and establish His covenant with them. And again, as we showed before, when He establishes the renewed covenant, Brit Hadashah, He is establishing the covenant He made with them through Moses as well, which establishes the one He made through Abraham, brings it to pass. They're kind of all tied together. They're all tied together because the Spirit of God is going to be the ability to keep the commandments of God in the original one, and Abraham kept those commandments, and his people had to as well. So all that is taken care of, and notice the no more worry about food at all. For they can eat the food from one crop, from one crop or one harvest, say the wheat harvest one year. For they can eat all the wheat harvest eat all the wheat from the wheat harvest this year. But next year, wheat harvest comes, they'll still have leftover from this year. There's to keep throwing it out, or or giving away or selling or something, because they're going to have more than they can possibly handle. Their cup's going to run over. As I'll set my tabernacle among you, my living place. You shall not whore you. Now it's referring to the temple in one sense, but it's got a little deep. It's more than that, because I'll walk among you and be your God. You shall be my people. He's going to do it in a way that's greater than what He did in the wilderness. And we talked about that when we talked about the birth of the Lamb. That God Himself became a man and walked on the earth, and that was greater than hiding in the pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. They could literally see, touch, and feel Him. But He's going to be even greater in the latter days than He was in those days during His reign. And that's what's brought out for us here in Job chapter 2, verse 23 through 27. Be glad then, you children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God, for He has given you the former rain moderately. It will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain and the latter rain in the first month. The floor shall be full of wheat, and the vat shall overflow with wine and oil. I'll restore to you the years the locust has eaten, the cankerworm, the caterpillar, and the palmer worm, my great army which I sent among you. You shall eat and play and be satisfied. And the praise of and praise the name of the Lord your God that dealt wondrously with you, and my people shall never be ashamed. So I am in the midst of Israel, and I am Lord your God, and none else. My people shall never be ashamed. Okay. Well, I'm going to start there at the never be ashamed part. Remember last week, their sin, we ended with their sins were completely taken away, never remembered or mentioned again. That's one reason they'll never be ashamed, but they're also, no one's going to challenge them and say, could say they're a fool for following, for following God and being obedient to God, because the whole world's going to be able to see the benefit of it. They're going to be able to see, the Messiah is doing more than what any man could do, and is going to see that he's not just, him and the resurrected saints, I should even say, are not just mere men. So we'll get to the resurrected saints later, but because he's going to be in the midst of Israel. I got him in the midst of Israel, where Zion, where the throne of the king is at. And as he gave them before, he gave them moderately, didn't give them enough sufficiently, and maybe not the latter rain at all, causing crop problems. But now it's going to come down the former and the latter rain the first month. And why is it a latter rain the first month? The former rain, because it's not tied to the biblical, it's not tied to the normal biblical calendar, a year that's year that begins in the spring when the barley becomes ripe for harvest. But it's the agricultural. It's with respect to the barley crop. The first rain comes when it's time to plant it, because of the germinate and to grow. And then winter sets in. And it may snow and whatever, the rain. But then the rain, then afterwards, in the first month comes this latter rain. And it comes just in time, right long before harvest. And what it does, it causes the grain, the kernels to swell up and grow and be larger. Okay, so you need both of those rains at the right time and the right amounts to get optimum crop yield. And that's what's going to happen here. And notice that in this cycle is going to also going to affect the grape harvest much later, in the olive harvest, which if I remember correctly, occurs after the grape harvest, kind of late fall, early winter time. So, and now, why another reason it overflows? Remember, the years the locust has eaten. Well, years. Notice. Remember, the whole earth went through this famine when the Antichrist arose. We saw, but Israel got so bad they couldn't even get at the end. It was just hopeless. They were eating. They were probably eating their livestock, and when it was gone, they were just going to die. Their livestock was thinning out too. But there was grass, I suppose, but they can't eat the grass. And there's some grass, but the main problem is their crops. 70% of human diet comes from calories, come from grains. In their case, wheat and barley. And there wasn't enough of that left over by the time of after the wheat harvest to even make one thing of. And part of the reason is just the drought and all those things we talked about, but these canker worms, these insect infestations that were just eating their crops up. And in America here, North America here, in one year we had this. In the West, they had this Rocky Mountain spotted locust. It's believed to be the largest accumulation of one type of animal on Earth at one time. Well over a trillion of these, and they ate in the Great Plains, everything down. In fact, they ate trees to the ground. Okay, grown mature trees they ate to the dirt where there's nothing. So that's the type of things going on there during the tribulation. Well, now he's going to restore all that, and they're never going to have to deal with that again. And they're not going to be shamed for putting their trust in God, because remember, the enemy had taunted them particularly towards the end, where's your God? All this bad stuff's happening to you. Where's your God? Well, the enemy's gonna the enemy their enemies are gonna have to shut their mouth because their God there in the form of Messiah is walking among them and causing them tremendous wealth in terms of food, which is the beginning of all wealth. Because if food's scarce, a bag of bread, if it's scarce enough, a bag of gold will buy a piece of bread. It drives the price of food. So that drives and it makes everything else not much money left for other stuff. That's really what drives inflation and things more than anything else. Just scarcity of food or abundance of food has more to do with the economy than anything else. Well, so their economy's got that great basis of food's going to be cheap and plentiful, leaving them even more of their money to do other things with. Now, let's continue on in Joel chapter 3, verse 17 through 18. So you shall know that I am the Lord your God, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy. There shall be no strangers pass through any more. It shall come to pass in that day that the mountains shall drop new wine, the hills shall flow with milk, and the rivers of Judah shall flow with waters. And a fountain shall come out of the house of the Lord and shall water the valley of Shittim. Okay, so no stranger will pass through anymore. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be Gentiles visiting the temple, because we know there will be. But it's a reference to ones occupying it and taking it over, that kind of thing, like the Roman army, the days of Yeshua, the Babylonian army, and really all the years after the Roman diaspora, there were various armies passing through Jerusalem. And occupying occupation is the ideal here, and that's never going to happen again. It's the eternal capital of Israel, and Messiah is going to be there, and the only people can come visit, but no one's going to come there and occupy it and try to take possession of it ever again. So it's going to come, and notice at this time the mountains are going to drop new wine, and the hills will flow with milk. Okay, well, wine comes from grapes. And here in North America, that literally happened. The Concord grape, the one you usually see grape jelly and stuff made of, the vice of the compound that makes grapes taste like grapes, and they're quote, the grapiest of all grapes. Well, when the Pilgrims came, well, the Vikings first, they called it Vineland, Vineland, because there were so many vines everywhere of these grapes, and the grapes, the juice would actually just come out, and they would actually be flowing down these mountains, grape juice, and ferment and turn into wine. Well, that's the same. That's the ideal here. They're gonna have so many grapes in such abundance that they're going to do this. And there's some varieties of grape, believe it or not, that actually will ferment in the grape before it's ever harvested. So they're gonna be breaking off, splattering the mountains with wine. The hills shall flow with milk. Well, that tells us what? The hills are going to be full of dairy cattle and dairy animals, I should say. Goats, sheep, cattle. Those are the primary ones. And they're going to be up there raising them. Now, the rivers of Judah are going to flow with waters. Now, this is interesting because right now, Judah's mentioned in particular, it's the southern part. Map would probably be appropriate here. The southern part of the land of Israel, Judah. And from here down, it's just totally, it's pretty dry. From here down, it's like the Negev's a desert and so on and so forth today. But you can kind of see little outlines. There's all these little wadis down here, which are just dried riverbeds. Here's kind of one right there. Okay, you can kind of see that there. Let me magnify that. Right there. It's kind of got, there you are. They're kind of, all right, you can see this whole wadi system here. It's where an ancient river used to flow into this river, but doesn't. Well, all these wadis are going to be full of water. Okay. the little canyons are really just the bottom of an ancient riverbed. Okay, down here you see some more. There's a little faint line of one right there and right there, and they're none of them are going to be dry anymore. They're going to have this whole area is going to be well watered, like the area Sodom was described before God destroyed it. Okay. Now, notice a fowl will come out of the house of the Lord and water the valley of Shittim. Shittim, Shittim is the valley where another word for the valley of the Salt Sea. It's a tree the usually associated with the acacia tree. It's the same word as the gopher wood that Noah made the ark out of. Anyway, but it's because this acacia grows in that area in abundance. It grows in dry areas, and but this river is going to come out. Now, there's a fountain going to come out of it and water this valley down by the Dead Sea. Now, remember we talked about a river of God earlier. Well, now we're finding out where this river of God starts them. It's actually going to flow out of the house of the Lord. We'll look at some more details with that river in a moment. But that's the next thing we know about this river of God. It's going to be there in the land of Israel with Messiah in the reign of the Lamb. Okay, now we're going to get some more insight into some more foreshadowing and insight into the reign of the Lamb and what's going to occur during that time. Here's what we read in Deuteronomy 11, verses 18 through 21. Therefore, you shall lay up these words in your heart and in your soul, and bind them for a sign upon your hand. They may be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall teach them your children, speaking of them when you sit in the house, in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates, that your days may be multiplied in the days of your children in the land which the Lord swore to your fathers to give them, as the days of heaven upon earth. Okay, we've seen the same commandments earlier in the previous lesson, but in a different chapter. But again, the parents' responsibility. The parents' responsibility to teach their children, not the Christian school, or the public school, or the church, or the neighbor, the village or whatever. It is the parents' job to do it. And the parents will be the ones are responsible to personally do this. And when they do this, when you're sitting in your home and when you're walking by the way, when you're at home and when you're not, kind of covers all the time. And the point about separating, spelled out this way is, you don't go on vacation and quit doing this. You never take a vacation from teaching them. Now, you're teaching them as the commandments of God in the context. We showed that before, okay? Or his words, okay? And again, not a mezuzah, little box that you nail to the side. It's got a little tiny scroll, and usually the Shema's in there. Well, sometimes people put something else. But it's talking about actually writing them on your doorpost of your house. So every time you come in and go out of your house, you see these words of God, these commandments, so you don't forget them. And upon your gates. So every time you enter and leave your property, you're leaving your house, you're going outside in your property. Let's say you got some sort of, let's say you have this ranch, okay? You got this fence around with a gate. Well, you're out in your work area and when you go there. But now when you go to the gate, you're not leaving you're leaving your property, not just your house, your dwelling place. Now you're going out into the world. So as you go out into the world, come back from your excursion into the world where you have to go out and do shopping or whatever, you see the commandments of God. You're to write the actual commandments of God on there. Not hide them in a little box and just remember, oh yeah, that's what that says in there. And that's what not about putting this in this box of mezuzah and kissing your fingers and touching the box or anything like that at all. Okay. It's supposed to be the actual words. Now, what's the point of all this? Oh, and bind them, you're supposed to bind them in your heart and soul. Well, that's what the new covenant's going to do. and bind them for a sign in your hands. That doesn't mean put telephim, telephim, telephim on your hands and leather strap and wrap. Use your right hand and wrap it around up your arm and go all the way around up on your up to a headband on your neck. We have a phylactery, the front that's in your eyes. The thing Messiah rebuked the Pharisees for making that phylactery large because it was showing, they did have to show how holy they were. But it means the word of God is to guide your actions and how you see the world. Now, when Israel's doing this, and they're going to be doing these things in the reign of the Lamb, he got rid of everyone that wouldn't. All Israel's saved because all the rebels are gone. Therefore, their days are going to be multiplied. They're going to live longer. And your children, in the land which the Lord swore to your fathers to give, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And what's their life going to be like during that long period? Misery? No, as days of heaven upon the earth, or just, boring and boredom and drudgery. No, as days of heaven upon the earth. It's going to be a preview of the eternal kingdom right here on earth. Okay, now that was the problem. Now, when the Messiah is reigning in Isaiah 65:20 through 24, we're going to see how we're going to get some insight on how that's going to play out. There shall be no more an infant of days, nor an old man that has not filled his days. But the child shall die 100 years old. The sinner being 100 years old shall be accursed. And they shall build houses and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them. They shall not build, another inhabit. They shall not plant, or another eat. Whereas the days of a tree are the days of my people. And my elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain, or bring forth nor bring forth for trouble. They are the seed of the blessed of the Lord, and their offspring with them. It shall come to pass that before they call, I will answer. And while they're yet speaking, I will hear. Okay. Well, he's going to hear them and answer them. He's going to, even before they do things, even before they go up to Messiah up there with a problem, he's going to have already sent a messenger with the solution. And as soon as they start speaking, he's going to hear them. He's going to know of it. The Spirit's going to reveal it to him. So, that's key to all the rest of this. Notice they're going to live. When you say the multiply their days, notice if they died at 100 years old, they're going to be considered a child. They're not going to. Instead of being 100 years, shall be accursed. Okay, he's old enough to know better. He's old enough, but accursed. I remember a lot of them. We saw that in the law when they said "cursed be so and so." It meant the death penalty be given to him for such and such. Okay, but if he's 100 years old, he's accursed. It's like he only made it to 100. We consider that someone that was cursed because he died as if he was just a child. And they will not die for their reason in rebellion against God, against the commandments, which will not happen if they teach their children, which they're going to do. Remember the words of Solomon: "Train your child in the way he should go, and he will not depart from it." So, because they're going to walk in the commandments of God, and Messiah is going to bless them, they're going to build houses, and they're going to inhabit them, not someone else. They're going to plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them, not someone else. Like that before, they're being raided and whatever. They're going to live like in the days of a tree. There are trees, the bristlecone pine here in the United States over on the West Coast. Some have been found to be 4,200 years old by core samples. They take cut a little thing out maybe about quarter inch by quarter inch and go away center tree and pull it out and count the rings and whatever. Shows the hot and dry seasons. And they can actually learn quite a bit about past weather from that as well. There's olive trees in Israel they found over 3,000 years old. A saltpeter tree, what's the other name? In Egypt, Termin. I said that right, Termin. Anyways, some people call them saltpeter or salt cedars. I'm sorry. Anyways, the Egyptians call them the tree of life because they seem to never die. Okay, they seem to be eternal. And a lot of trees, honestly, will not die of old age if they be protected. If they and some of these I mentioned are highly resistant to fire. Okay, but if they don't have insect infestation or something, or someone taking an axe to them, it's about the only way that a lot of them will ever die is just when man comes through with a chainsaw or whatever. They'll just keep living, and that's the ideal about these people during the days of Messiah. And because of that, they'll long enjoy the work of their hands. You know, right now, my great grandfather built a house I grew up in by, him and his sons by hand. Took some of the property, accumulating no debt, but took him 17 years. Well, after he finally got it built, I don't know, maybe he lived there 20 years in it. I'm not quite sure how long he lived. Let's say he lived there 40 years in it after he got it built. Then, it's someone else's, and eventually, but in their case, they build these things at the beginning of the reign of Messiah. They're going to live at it. They're going to live in it for keep living in it. They don't have to worry about having a mortgage the whole time. Right? They're going to build that themselves and then keep building it because they're going to keep owning it. And they can go up another story if they want or whatever they want to do. And they keep making it grander and better, and it's always going to be theirs. So they're not going to labor in vain or bring forth for trouble. Let's say they make some sort of craft, and there's a craft, and they got these craft fairs say happen in the fall, but maybe let's say the big ones are in the Feast of Tabernacles on the days that aren't Sabbaths. Okay, they're not going to spend the whole year from the last one preparing some craft and get there nobody buy it. Okay. The Lord's going to be directing them, giving them the idea of what to make, and people is going to be in demand. Whatever they put their hand to is going to be blessed. And they're not going to start something, bring forth for trouble, that ends up causing them just cause them trouble and never brings them any satisfaction. That's just not going to happen with them. Because again, the key is the Lord answering them. Before they even call, before they even say, I don't know what I should be doing, they're going to get a message. And what should I do? The Lord's going to send a messenger to tell them. And it's going to work. God's plans work because they're God's plans. Now, let's continue on here in Amos 9, verse 13 through 15. Behold, the days comes to the Lord that the plowman shall overtake the reaper. The treader of grapes, him that sows seed. The mountains shall drop sweet wine, and all the hills shall melt. And I'll bring again the captivity of my people Israel, and they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and drink the wine thereof. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them. And I'll plant them upon their land. They shall be no more pulled up out of the land which I have given them, says the Lord your God. Hey, notice what the Lord is going to do. Notice the plowman's going to overtake the reaper. The reaper won't be done getting last year's crop, for the plowman starts seeing the plow for the next year's crop. Or won't be done reaping this year's crop, for the plowman's needing to plow it up for the next year's crop. The treader of grapes, the ones who's great, him that's sowing the seeds, the grape seeds, of course, in this context, okay? He's gonna be out there still treading grapes when this other guy's trying to start planting grapes. So that's why it's going to drop sweet wine, and the hills are going to or shall melt. Again, a reference to primarily dairy products. Think about things that food that melts. What do you think of? Butter, cheese. Generally, they're dairy products. Okay, the hills are going to melt. We wouldn't say olive oil because it's already liquid, but that's not really melting. So again, covered with dairy producing animals. They're going to build them and drink thereof. They're going to make gardens. Again, a reference to the gardens, notice, and eat the fruit of them. Remember, we talked about the fruit on the trees at the beginning, and at the ingathering of the fruit is when Feast Tabernacles is. But those are going to be planted on their land. Those are the crops are planted. The people are planted. They're going to be each one. They're going to be given. Everyone's going to be given a piece of land inside the land of Israel, and nobody can take from them ever. Worst case, if they somehow got in debt or whatever, they get it back at the year of Jubilee. But it's not just remember how it's going to work too. We saw this. We talked about this before. The individual tribe is going to have its land. Here, I think a picture here, a map here would probably be most helpful. Okay, each tribe is going to have its own land. Some of these names people aren't really sure of, but this is pretty close. The gates of Hamath, which is up there in Syria today, North Damascus. Here's Damascus. Okay, give you an idea. And it's roughly the size of the state of Kentucky, by the way. Now, inside that tribe, say there's a clan, and it's all going to be together. Inside that clan is a major family. Let's say all the Smiths. Let's say that's one of the clan's family names. All the Smiths. Inside down there, the individuals all the way down to. So when you get down to the individual family, say it was me and my brothers. My brother's property was right next to mine. My cousins through my dad's brother's property, dad's brother's sons' property would be right next to ours, and so on and so forth. So it's not just the individual's never going to lose their land, the tribe's never going to lose the land, the clan's never going to lose its land. The extended the larger families inside a clan are never going to lose their land. The individual family's never going to lose its land. They're going to be planted. And I show it today. There's also one that says Beulah. Beulah means married to the land. Okay, Beulah land. You may have heard of that song. That's what that means. Married to the land. They're never going to divorce it. It's going to be there. They're never going to be pulled up out of their land, which I've given them, like they've been plucked up in the past because they're under punishment for breaking God's commandments. And they won't be doing that no more. Now, remember we mentioned this about the garden or river, except now we're going to look at what the conditions are going to be like in the land of Israel. Starting with, we should perhaps say start with the land of Israel. We'll talk next time about Messiah rolling out his kingdom in our next lesson. We talk about the conquest of the Lamb. But right now we're starting with Israel. It's the model that shows what all the other kingdoms are going to be like too. It's all going to have those same similar conditions. So the Jew first and the Gentile. They're going to get this benefit first, and it's going to roll out to other nations, just like just like it did with the gospel. So the Jew first, then it rolled out to Gentiles. Well, here we go in Genesis 2:8, and we read this: the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and he put the man whom he had formed. Okay, this garden, Eden, remember, means pleasure. The garden eastward in a garden of pleasure, and that's where he placed man. Well, that's what the land of Israel is going to be like in the future. And again, it's going to roll out to the whole world of it, to the whole world. We'll talk about that rolling out process again next lesson, as I said. Now, in Isaiah 51, verse 3 through 4, we read about, we see this confirmed. For the Lord shall comfort Zion. He shall comfort all of her waste places, and he'll make her wilderness like Eden, and her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness shall be found therein, thanksgiving and the voice of melody. Hearken to me, my people. Give ear to me, my nation, O my nation. For a law shall proceed from me, and I will take my judgment to light, to rest for a light to the of the people. Okay. Then I be notice comfort Zion. Now Zion here, when people saying Zionists today, people move back to Israel. It's not just reverence, just it's going to start from where the throne of the Lamb is, and go out over Israel. So that's really a reference to all of Israel there. He's going to make her wilderness like Eden. And remember, the pleasures, okay? Like it'd be like a garden, or desert like the Garden of Eden, like that like their soul will be like a well-watered garden. They're going to plant gardens. The Lord's making the whole land like the Garden of Eden. And that's going to be the foundation for joy and gladness. Thanksgiving. I mean, Thanksgiving, we have that in America with a holiday Thanksgiving. What do people usually do? They cook a ton of food. And often people eat more than they should. But they kind of got a mentality. Calories eat on Thanksgiving won't make me fat. It's not true, but still, it seems to be the mindset. And it's perhaps the most carb-packed meal in the entire year for most people. But so you got this idea of this food connected to Thanksgiving as well. And the voice of melody, when you talk about melody, the voice of melody, you're talking about singing. It's going to be singing and dancing and music and eating and because food's going to be cheap and plentiful and delicious and nutritious. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Get rid of me, people. Oh, my nation. Remember the word nation here. Man, literally go like ethnic group. Okay. Oh, my ethnic group. My people. His people's bigger than just the ethnic group. Okay. Or the ethnic group. Anyways. But the law shall proceed from me, for a law shall proceed from me, and I'll make my judgment for rest to the light of the people. People aren't going to be walking around darkness, not knowing what to do anymore. They're not going to be worried either. They're going to be resting because he's going to tell them what to do. Because they're obedient, they're going to do it, and because they do that, they're going to be blessed. Now, we're going to continue on. We're going to look at get some more insight into this here in Exodus 36, 35, 38 about how this was foreshadowed by the Garden of Eden. And they shall say, this land is desolate, become like the Garden of Eden. The waste and the desolate and ruined cities are become fenced and are inhabited. They even left around about you shall know that I, the Lord, build the ruined places and plant that was desolate. I, the Lord, have spoken it and will do it. Thus says the Lord, I will yet for this be inquired by the house of Israel to do it for them. I will increase them with men like a flock. And as the holy flock, as the flock of Jerusalem in their solemn feast, so shall the waste cities be filled with flocks of men, and they shall know that I am the Lord. Okay, at the time of the holy feast, there are a bunch of extra sacrifices, and of course, you want to think of Passover. There's a lamb per family. Okay, so Jerusalem's those dedicated to the Lord. And of course, the tabernacles, they brought their livestock, and they passed them under the rod, and 1 and 10 was the Lord's. And that also made part of this holy flock. Okay, so you got the idea there's just a ton of sheep there. That's how these cities are going to be. They're going to be filled with flocks of men. And which ones? The ones that are ruined. The same cities that they used to live in that were ruined. We don't even know where. Probably we're lucky if we know where a third of the cities mentioned in the Bible exactly where they were today. Some we know for certain because they never quit being inhabited, like Jerusalem, continually inhabited. Even if it was just a village in the day of Mark Twain, there's still people there. But most of them, many of them, there's mounds, and they think, okay, maybe that mound, the little hill over there, is really a tell where city used to be and got destroyed and got covered by dirt, or perhaps they rebuilt the city on top of it and built this little mound, and they got covered with dirt, and now it's grass growing. They dig on those, and it's like they find out, sure enough, that's a tell. Well, the Lord hadn't lost track of where any of them are, and he's gonna plant that which was desolate. He's gonna put them back there. He's gonna put them back in these cities and be planted like they're gonna be planted, never to leave. Now, you read they're gonna be fenced. Well, why fenced? Well, you might be thinking for defense, but we're going to see that's not the case. It's just to mark their boundaries so you don't get urban sprawl. Remember, the commandment was there's to be a green zone, says suburban King James. Remember, we explained it's a green zone. We showed it in scripture. It goes out about 5/8 of a mile or a kilometer all the way around the wall of a city. And no one's allowed to build in that. Well, that will keep these cities from growing and annexing smaller villages and whatever, and taking their property and saying we got eminent domain and because we need to grow and blah blah blah. Nope, that city's full. It's just going to be full, and that's it. It's not going to get any. It's going to grow to. The only way direction it can grow is upward, but it's going to keep that urban sprawl from ever occurring, which is, by the way, a lot of wasted land is done by land development, strictly agreed when the urban sprawl is created. And he's putting an end to that. Okay, because remember, everyone's got their land, their farm or whatever forever. So no one's going to be able to take it under eminent domain or anything and say, we need that for our city and we're taking it from you. Nope, isn't going to happen. Okay, so therefore, instead they're going to end up packed like sheep in the sheep pen. The city's going to become, some of them will become quite crowded. Now, in Genesis 2, verse 9, read the following. The next foreshadowing here in the Garden of Eden. Out of the ground made the Lord to grow every tree that's pleasant to the sight, good for food. The tree of life was in the midst of the garden, in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Well, the tree of knowledge of good and evil is what got us in this mess. But the tree of life was also there, notice, in the middle of the garden. Everything went from one side to the other, transversing around this garden. Adam and Eve had to pass by this tree of life. And for whatever reason, didn't seem to occur to them, let's try that one and eat that one. But everything is good for food and pleasant to the sight. You can have a tree. Well, a lot of trees are kind of gnarled, and ugly looking, like dogwood trees here out where I grew up when I was younger. In my teen and childhood days, we had dogwoods. Yeah, they produce pretty flowers, beautiful flowers in the spring, and particularly when the whole mountains cover them. The trees themselves are kind of gnarled and ugly, like an olive tree when I used to live in Greece. Well, the trees themselves are going to be pleasant to the sight, and they're going to have good for food. Notice every tree there produce food, and today that's not true. That's generally not true. there's all kinds of trees that don't produce a darn thing for you to nothing for you to eat at all. But that's the way it was in the garden. They were all good for food. They were all pleasant looking trees. And that good tree of life was there. And yet they went and picked out the tree of good and evil. The only one God said don't touch. They never said don't touch the tree of life. They could have touched it and didn't. And went for the one they were told not to. Got us in the mess we are today. Well, this is gonna start being reversed under Messiah. And here's what we see in Ezekiel 34, verse 29. I'll raise of them a plant of renown. They shall no more be consumed with hunger in the land, nor bear the shame of the heathen anymore. Okay, a plant of renown. Renown means fame. This plant's going to be world famous. They're going to bear the shame of the heathen. It's kind of twofold. One, of course, we're talking things we talked about before. The other is the shame they brought themselves from doing the things the heathen did, the Gentiles did, or didn't even know God in a lot of cases. Okay, and perhaps they'd marred their bodies or put prints on them like tattoos, which they were commanded not to do. Well, this tree is going to take care of all that. All those things that marked them as once having done the shameful things the heathen did, who were just ignorant. And remember, this means Gentile. And it corresponds to the group, but yeah, there's groups that just did all kinds. And they just joined in with them, and that left marks, and those marks can be removed by this plant of renown. And it's gonna and it alone would keep them from getting hungry, besides the things we talked about. In Ezekiel 47, verse 12, we read about this plant of renown. And by the river upon the bank thereof, on this side of that shall grow the fruit, all the trees for meat, whose leaf shall not fade. Neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. It shall bring forth new fruit according to his months. Because their waters they issued out of the sanctuary, and the fruit thereof shall be for meat, and the leaf shall be for medicine. Okay, this river is that river of God we talked about. Remember, we showed out comes out of the sanctuary. Because that's what's going to water these trees. They're going to be on the banks on the bank, this side and that. It's not just one tree, okay? And notice this: the leaf is there for medicine. Well, that's what it's for these leaves that's going to cause them to no longer bear the approach of the heathen. If they got a tattoo, well, we don't know if they make a salad out of these leaves, or they make a drink of the tea, or all the above. But this is a new fruit every month. That's what it's saying there. Okay, so this tree is like the tree of life, but think of the tree of life light. It's kind of a preview or potent of the tree of life. One thing it doesn't say is they'll live forever if they eat off the fruit of this tree. But it is gonna, and also I'm not showing it this year, I've shown before, their skin will be like babies. And it'll cure everything that ails you. They get a little cut or scrape or something. They use that leaf. That leaf, they use that leaf. How they do it? Let's say they make a salad out of it with the fruit. Okay, maybe that's how they do it. Let's say they do that. Even that little cut and scrape will be gone, not leaving any marks at all. It will keep them in good. It will keep them in perfect health. And so they're not going to live long lives. They live before the flood. Methuselah lived to 969 years. And at the end of that, indeed, look old like people look old today at 90 years old or whatever. They're going to still look like they're in their 20s. Okay, they're going to look at 20 years old generally in the Bible, and people are quit being called children. Those who were below 20 were called children, and were not punished with those who were 20 and above by not going to the promised land. Well, so 20 is perhaps the age of full maturity here. and they're just going to look like they're 20 forever. Well, forever until as long as they keep eating this tree year by year or whatever coming there and fruit. And this is why this is this is a plant of renown because it's not just them. It applied to anyone that came there. The Gentile came to their land and got these leaves. Okay, so they're growing on the bank of this river. Remember, this river is flowing out from the throne. I mean, out from the temple, the house of God. Okay, so that's what makes it world famous. And everybody we're going to seek are going to come to Israel, going to come to Zion in Israel, and to obtain this fruit. But it's not just the fruit. Remember, we mentioned the river there. The river is what's powering this fruit we just saw. Because of the waters issues out of the river. This fruit has its ability because of the water that's coming out of it as well. It can't grow anywhere. It's not like the Gentiles can take take some of those seed back home with them and plant them. They have to have this water. It's kind of like Vidalia onions. They won't grow anywhere but around Vidalia, Georgia, and have that same flavor. They try to grow them other places, Texas, whatever, and it just won't come out right. Or a Kona coffee. I got some Kona coffee and went to Hawaii and brought some home, and it only grows in this one area, and it has to do with the soil. Well, there's water in this case is necessary, and that water here is again picturing the Garden of Eden here by this river. Here's what we read in Genesis 2, verse 10, or Bereshit if you prefer, Genesis if you prefer Hebrew, Genesis if you prefer Greek. And the river went out of Eden to water the garden. And from there it was parted and it became four heads and came into four heads. Okay, so we talked about this river before, and we shown when we were talking about the day before the patriarch, what the world was before the time of the patriarchs was like. And we shown that in modern times, like the Euphrates Tigris River actually starts out as one river, splits into two, and then they rejoin later. And they actually got little streams joining them in between up in the upper part, several places. So this does occur. Normally when you see a river, what you think of is tributaries. One tributary feeds into the main stream of another of the river. And the river gets larger and so on and so forth. But there are cases even today where the river splits, okay, and goes two different directions or whatever. Well, that's what happened with the Garden of Eden. But notice that it's to water the garden. All right, those trees, including that tree of life that was in there, were watered by this river. This river is a preview. The similar type of river is going to be I forgot what the word I'm looking for is, but anyway, because this is a preview, but it's going to be resumed again. Okay, it's going to be brought in existence again. It's going to flow out of the temple as we saw earlier. Here we're reading Ezekiel 47 verses 8 through 11 about this river. And he said unto me, these waters issue out towards the east country and go down to the desert and go to the sea, which is being brought into the sea, the waters shall be healed. It shall come to pass that everything that lives, which moves, whereso these rivers shall come, shall live. And there shall be a great multitude of fish, because the waters are come to there. For they shall be healed, and every living thing everything shall live where the river comes. And it shall come to pass the fisher shall stand upon it from Engedi under Engalim, and they shall be a place to spread forth nets. And their fish shall be according to their kinds, as the fish of the great sea, exceeding many. But the miry place and the marishes thereof shall not be healed, they shall be given to salt. Okay, there's going to be some evidence left of this. And notice the great sea is the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, so these fish are going to be saltwater fish, okay? living there. We have these salty edges on the crust, and sometimes you'll see this sort of thing on some beaches around the ocean, and that's often where they get their sea salt from. Except you'll see that kind of thing. So and perhaps they'll even gather this salt and sell it perhaps as well. But the miry places, the muddy places, and the little marshes around the edge, they're going to be given the salt. Okay, and again, it's testimony that it was dead. That now it was, as the generations go on, that this once was really so full of salt, nothing could live in it. That's why the Dead Sea's dead. But everything's going to be healed. And notice, dead things that were alive, when that water touches them, are going to come to life. Everything shall live where the water comes. Wherever they come shall live. It moves, and that river starts flowing. If there was a dead carcass of a cow, the cow's going to get up and start, moving. A fish, whatever it may be, and the Dead Sea will be dead no more. Now, notice going to be fish of the Great Sea, exceeding many. Of course, the thought is how they get there. Well, one answer is like if you ever build a farm pond or any kind of place out where I grew up, you have to do nothing. Perch will show up in that thing automatically. How they get there? Their eggs are birds. Sometimes they eat them or whatever, and birds that like to frequent water place, and they comes out in their poo, and then they fertilized eggs hatch in there, or sometimes they stick to the bird's legs or whatever. Primarily through birds. Some cases they've even been known to raindrops to rain down. So that's one way, but that's not how these fish are going to get there. They're like those in the Great Sea. Here's how it's gonna work. In Zechariah 14, verse 7 through 8. This shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, nor day nor night. Shall come to pass in the evening time it shall be light. And in that day the living water shall go out of Jerusalem, half of them towards the former sea, and half towards the hinder sea. In summer and winter it shall be. Okay. And those people are still eating fish. They're out there catching them with these nets, okay? Just brought that to your attention for a moment here. Okay, so now, and this starts when this time where it's not day nor night, where it's just like stuck in the evening in twilight time, is when they call out to Messiah, Baruch Hashem Adonai, blessed be he that comes in the name of the Lord. But in Jerusalem and Judah and in the land of Israel, they accept him as king earlier, but 2/3 have already been killed, and half of Jerusalem's been taken. Okay, so when they get finally desperate, they turn to God, like a lot of people do. But when that happens, that's what's referring to. That's when that water is going to start flowing out and going to these. And notice, in the winter and summer it shall be. A lot of places out here where I'm living today, we got the Arkansas River. Even if the Corps of Engineers doesn't do something to mess with it, in the winter, sometimes even in the winter or summer when it's drier, you can practically walk across the riverbed, just like a little creek. Other times it's up to its bank, and of course, when there's a flood, it's over its banks. Well, this river is going to be consistent all the time. Another place in Ezekiel told about its exact depth and how far out you went and so on and so forth. And it's always going to be flowing. This rivers of living water. And of course, the Spirit of God is a river of living water in us that flows out and brings life to those who don't know Messiah. And this physical river is going to bring life to those who are dead physically as well. So it's not just a river of, that is something like the tree of life, but it's also a sort of a river of life that's going to come out of there. Similar, that waters that tree of life, just like the river in Eden watered the tree of life in the Garden of Eden. Now we're gonna look. We're gonna look at another aspect of these days of heaven on earth, what they look like as pre-shadowed for us in the book of Genesis, Bereshit, in the very first chapter, Genesis. And God said, "Behold, I've given you every herb bearing fruit, bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat, and to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and everything that creeps upon the earth, wherein is life. I have given every green herb for meat." And it was so. Okay, notice everything's a vegetarian. Remember, meat means food. King James is King James for food. Today we'd say food, not, meat means flesh of an animal that's eaten. And in the King James, it usually will say the flesh of a cow, whatever the case is. But so this is food. Everything. Remember, every tree was producing fruit. Okay, so that everything on earth was eating plants. Every animal on earth was eating plants at the time of the Garden of Eden. Now, here's what we read in Isaiah 11:6 about the days when the reign of the Lamb. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with a kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a young child shall lead them. And the cow and the bear shall feed. The young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. Okay, notice the wolf's not trying to kill and eat the lamb for dinner. Leopard's not trying to kill and eat the baby goat, the kid, for dinner. This Kevin, this young lion, and this fatling, all of them youngs, okay, fatlings, a little bit older, okay, like the fat calf, think of it, okay, they're all there together. And a little child shall lead them. They're all tamed. You would let a little child go up to a wolf today, and one in the wild particularly, or a leopard, or a young lion, and lead them about like you might with a lamb or a goat, or say a baby calf. Okay. Now the bear and the cow and the bear shall feed and together. Now bears will eat grass. I watched the video of a Kodiak in this really tall grass in Alaska. I just mowing that down like a cow. But they also eat meat. They're omnivores. But they won't be any more. They're going to feed them together. Notice their young ones are going to lie down together. You don't see calves and bear cubs laying next to each other. And one thing, the mama bear will just come and kill the calves and feed it to the baby bears, to the cubs. And lions shall eat straw like an ox. Now, right now, when they're starving, lions have been when they're going through a drought in Africa. They've been filmed and videoed and observed. They use their claws and will eat rotten wood if they have to, but they never eat grass. But they'll be able to, and you'll make assumptions about things based on the teeth of an animal. But today, if you ever look at the mouth of a fruit bat, it has nothing but fangs. Don't have any molars, don't have any bicuspids, don't have any incisors, just fangs. Yet all it eats is fruit. It's why it's called a fruit bat. Okay. So these animals will be able to eat that, and that doesn't mean they won't lose their claws and lose their sharp teeth. They just won't use them for killing other animals and eating them. There'll be no animosity between animals at all. Now in Ezekiel 34, verse 35 to 28, we we read some more about how this works, how this is going to work. And I will make with them a covenant of peace and cause the evil beasts to cease out of the land. They shall dwell safely in the wilderness. And I'll make them and the resting places about my hill a blessing. And I'll cause the shower to come down this season, and there shall be showers of blessing. The tree of the fruit of the field shall yield her fruit, and the earth shall yield her increase. They shall be safe in the land, so that I am the Lord when I've broken the bands of their yoke and delivered them into out of the hand of those who serve themselves of them. They shall no more be a prey to the heathen. There shall the beasts of the land devour them. They shall dwell safely, and none shall make them afraid. Okay, he's going to make a covenant of peace in their place. It makes it very plain. It's with the animals themselves. He's going to cause the evil beasts to cease out of the land. Well, we just read it. He's not going to mean there's not going to be lions, wolves, leopards, or lions in the land, but they're not going to cause harm to anyone anymore. So therefore, the people are going to sleep safely in the woods. They can live in the woods just like Adam did in the Garden of Eden, and sleep in there just like he did in the Garden of Eden. He didn't go to sleep in the Garden of Eden and worry about something killing him and eating him, or even they're not even get bit by chiggers or ticks or anything. Okay. When I was younger, I actually slept on the ground without anything before sometimes, but a lot of times I didn't put bitten by ticks or something, and I don't know, I could, and there were bears, mountain lions, red wolves, and gray wolves. Some of the red wolves were, I never heard of them actually bothering people, but they could have, and so on. So, and at night coming out to hunt, rattlesnakes. There were water moccasins near the water, and copperheads, more venomous snakes. And I never got harmed. The Lord protected me, I suppose. It would seem, but it really isn't smart to it really isn't safe to just lay in the woods when those kind of things are around today. But in their day, everyone's going to be able to do it. Because God's making a covenant of peace, not just with the people, but with the animals themselves. And they're going to have peace between animal and animal, and peace between animal and man when the Lamb is reigning. And notice, they'll no more be a prey to the heathen or the beasts of the land. Remember, those walls were to keep out wild animals as well as invading people who treated them like prey, like today a lamb can be prey to a wolf. Okay, well, so also was Israel a prey to Gentiles who preyed upon them, devoured them, so to speak. And it's never going to be anymore. So those walls I mentioned are not for that reason. They're for containment to prevent urban sprawl, and they protect the farmers from someone bigger and more numerous, whoever pushing them out and taking their farm from them. Now let's continue on. Genesis 3, verse 14 through 15. And the Lord reversed. That's what I was trying to say. It's reversed it earlier. And the Lord said to the serpent, there's one more aspect, one thing it's not going to change. Well, it's going to change, but not completely, not be completely reversed. And that's here in our last section we're going to look at. And in Genesis 3, verse 14 through 15, we read the following about snakes or serpents. The Lord said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed above all cattle. Remember, that means livestock, and above every beast of the field. Upon your belly shall go, and the dust shall eat all the days of your life. I'll put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. It shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Of course, this is prophetic, talking about the seed of woman, the Messiah, and Satan, the serpent cooperated with Satan, and thus has his punishment. And even in modern times, they have found like baby pythons, while they're developing, they develop the places for arms and legs to come out. And we're like with lizards and everything else, they observe that there started being a specialization. They start growing out of those places. They're buds. They're kind of like limb buds for the limbs to grow out of, but they just stop. They never grow. So that so that shows they have the ability to have legs and arms, but don't. So you put this enmity, and there's this enmity as well. And most women, oh my gosh, they're just so scared of snakes and just hate them and can't stand to be around them. A lot more than men. And of course, men kill snakes, and snakes can kill people. Just this year in America, I heard just a month or so ago, a guy was out hiking in Tennessee, stepped on a rattlesnake, which is the main way people actually get bit by rattlesnakes, by the way. They warn you they don't want to bite you because they need that venom for their prey. But you step on them, they'll bite you out of self-defense instinctively. Well, so there's this enmity, so there's this damage they're doing to each other, snakes and people. That's been going on ever since then. Well, now we're going to look at the reversal. We're going to see how this is reversed during the reign of the Lamb. And here's what we read in Isaiah 11, verse 8. And the sucking child shall play at the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand in the cockatrice's den. Okay, a child's not weaned, usually, say, a couple years old for they're weaned. So it's talking about that or younger. Now right now, no mama's going to let their kid go out and play at the hole of the asp. An asp is like a smaller version of a cobra, but it still bites a young child. That young child is going to die, a baby. A person gets bit by an asp, an adult. It will also kill them if untreated. Not quite as quick as it will a baby because it depends on how much venom to blood ratio. The young baby's smaller, it's gonna die quicker. Now look, a weaned child, one that's say older, 2, 3, 5, a cockatrice den. Now don't get caught with that word cockatrice. That's in King James days, that was a word for a cobra. Okay, cobra's den. And remember, a lot of times these cobras, like rattlesnakes, when they're in a den, there's not just one. There's it's a snake pit. There's a bunch of them in there. He's not going to put his hand on the top of that den and arouse those cobras, but they'll be able to. There's no enmity between the seed of woman and the seed of the serpent anymore. That's all gone. And the snakes, just like everything else, don't harm anything. We finish this in Isaiah 65, verse 25, where there's reversal concerning serpents. And so there's one thing that's exceptional about their reversal compared to everything else we've looked at. And the wolf and the lamb shall feed together, and the lion shall eat straw like the bullock, and dust shall be upon the serpent's meat. Shall be the serpent's meat. They shall not hurt or destroy my holy mountain, says the Lord. Okay, so what we have here is, we've seen before, they're feeding together. They're out there eating grass together. The lion's just out there like a bull. A bullock's usually a young bull of a year old or whatever, but they're eating straw. Okay, and where maybe straw instead of grass, they're eating it. Okay, dust, but dust will still be the serpent's meat. The serpent's not getting back its arms and legs, still going to be crawling around, living in holes and dirt like we saw. And again, just like that salt in the miry places, a testimony of what happened before. A reminder, because even during the millennium, the just will have to live by faith. Someone's born in the middle of that and reads in the book of Daniel, they threw someone in the lion's den. All they ever see him do is those are big playmates for kids. You know, and that, what and what's the danger? They just eat grass. Would be what would be their experience. They're gonna that's by faith accept that they used to kill and eat other animals, including people. So the just will still have to live by faith even during the reign of the Lamb. And the day if you want the Lamb to reign in your life today, you've also got to live by faith. Faith is confidence that leads to action. You cannot sin by faith. Sinning is the opposite of faith. It means you didn't trust God, assuming you didn't do it in ignorance. You do it in ignorance, you do it in rebellion. God winks at ignorance, but rebellion, he commands everyone to repent. And once you're no longer ignorant, he commands you to repent. If you don't, that's rebellion. You have to live, you trust, you have to trust and obey, just like the old song says. Trust and obey, there is no other way, the old hymn. And it's still true. You cannot obey God in all circumstances if you don't trust him. He knows best. He's going to come through for you, and so on and so forth. You can't trust God without obeying him. Because if you trust him, you will obey him. So there'll be some evidence left, even in the millennium. So people will have faith in him, because the just will still have to live by faith in the millennium. But we need to live by faith today. So you need to surrender control of your life to Messiah today, because you believe God raised him from the dead. So I've got to this week for this time. Till next time, shalom.